today, when you were speaking, you talked about sort of a shift in the way that we think of charities as being mission-driven and for-profit companies being, well, profit-driven. And I'm wondering, when we look at some of these companies that are appearing in that space in between, like the Bullfrog Powers or fair trade companies, what is driving this change, this shift in the way that we're thinking about these companies?
Well, I mean, I think we've got early adopters that have come in and have recognized the seriousness with what we're facing as a planet and are looking for ways that they can be part of that solution. So, I think it started with the Ben & Jerry's. It started with folks who said, we think that there's a market opportunity to do good and to do well. And so I think that there's a sense. It comes from a personal place. I work with social entrepreneurs every single day, and what motivates them is their own sense of meaning and actually a little bit of rage mixed in. Because to be a social entrepreneur, I think you need a little bit of rage, a little bit of frustration with how the world is going in this, and that you see yourself as being able to add value, to be part of shifting a system, and to be able to succeed in the actual achievement of that mission. So whether it's renewable energy for Bullfrog Power, or whether it's meaningful employment for Good Foot Delivery, or whether it's about fundamentally changing the way we work, like we do at the Center for Social Innovation, by actually biasing towards collaboration and innovation. So how do we cluster for innovation and collaboration? And ultimately these things come out of a need to create meaning and to live reconciled lives. When we look around the world and we see the context that we live in, there's increasing numbers of people who are no longer able to compartmentalize that which is their work and that which is their life, and are looking at how we can bring our work and our lives together and to a more harmonious balance.
That definitely seemed to be something that really struck a chord with some of the attendees today, was this idea of, the corporate burnout, and how do you reconcile maybe what you love to do at work with if it doesn't meet your same need for social change and social innovation. Mm-hmm. Do you have advice that you would offer to the leaders of companies when it comes to how can they inspire their teams to meet both of their goals?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think every corporation, every business is going to be slightly different in what they do. I mean, fundamentally, I'm interested in how corporations are actively, in their fundamental business model, in what they do, adding value to make the world a better place. And I think many already are. But I think we can be more intentional about that process. And I think it's about opening up a conversation, looking at where market opportunity exists, and being able to use our creativity and our leadership to be able to take some risks that both lead us down a market development path, but also may lead us down a mission path. And I think that's the fun. I mean, that's where the joy comes, is in figuring out what do the business models of a sustainable future look like. We don't know what they are, and I think the opportunity in corporations to start to play in that space and to bring their resources, their capacity, their skills into the change process, into the world of co-creating a better community. To me, there's nothing more exciting.
And one of the themes that you touched on today that I think a lot of people are really starting to think about, and I thought was so interesting, was the idea of how big is too big, size. We're seeing a lot of books coming out now about lean startups, going lean business models. So can you talk a little bit more about this idea of how big too big is too big, and how leaders of companies should maybe be thinking about this as they adjust their business plans coming out of the volatile markets we're experiencing right now?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, there's so many different ways of approaching that. From a personal position, I'm a mom. I have 2 boys at home, and I remember making the decision that we were not going to franchise our model. The Center for Social Innovation is a viable business model. We could have franchised, and I said to myself, it's more important that I'm a mom. Fascinating motivation for me not to take it to scale, if you will. Instead, we've achieved growth of a different kind. So that's a personal question of the people who are leading these organizations have to ask themselves a question about what's the life they want to live, and what does work-life balance mean to them. But there's a big macro perspective on this too. Japan is the first country in the world that has experienced negative growth. This is, we're only going to see more of it. The world is changing. This assumption that growth is unlimited is simply not true. We are a finite planet with finite resources, and although we still experience population growth, it will peak and it will start to decline. And the question is, and that assumes that there are no horrific other impacts on our population. So the question becomes, what does a company look like? What does a corporation look like that is not assuming growth, growth, growth? And does a lack of growth mean stagnation? Or can a lack of growth mean quality? Can it mean depth? Can it mean innovation? And I think this is it's a set of questions. I don't think we know what the answers are, but I think that we will be experiencing less growth. We will have to deal with that, and we're going to have to reinvent ways of engaging shareholders in that conversation. We're going to have to start to rethink. As you said, the lean movement is rethinking the shareholder altogether. To me, that's a really great first step, and the beautiful thing is that we're adaptive, we're clever as the human species, and I have no question that if we keep our values front and center, that we'll be able to come up with some great solutions for how to manage that and live quality lives.